The WWE GameCube games are fondly remembered. Day of Reckoning 1 and 2 are remembered for their great gameplay, story mode, and overall just being really good wrestling games in general. Wrestlemania 19 is known for its revenge mode, but there was another one, and this was the first WWE GameCube game, Wrestlemania 18. This game is kind of forgotten just because it's overshadowed by its predecessors, but I decided to look into Wrestlemania 18 to see if it was as good as I remember or not. So I guess it's time for some backstory on this game. Well, after the massive successes of the Aki games, No Mercy, such as No Mercy WrestleMania 2000 on the N64, we time to move into the future with the next console generation. Unfortunately, AKI Games, at the time, their name, was not able, or they did not agree or whatever to do another game on the GameCube. So WWE had to use their THQ and Ukes to develop this game for the GameCube. This game came out in I would say June of 2002, I believe. So this is kind of it came out before Shut Your Mouth, but after Just Bring It. So that's the time frame. Another thing that's really interesting is Steve Austin. This game has two different covers. One cover has Steve Austin front and center, and the other one has The Rock. This is due to the fact that Steve Austin walked out on the WWE, and obviously they didn't have enough time to change the covers on the game, so they just had to just wing it and just put Austin there. So yeah, let's see. So when it comes to your game modes, we have Exhibition, Path of the Champions, and Battle with the Belts. We'll get to those later, as well as Create a Wrestler mode. But let's start out with Exhibition. You have your typical matches. You've got normal, hardcore, cage, Hell in a Cell, ladder, table, TLC. And then basically you have fatal 4-way, triple threat, handicap, tag team with the same stipulations. So it's a pretty typical game mode roster. There's a decent amount of variety, so that's good at least. Alright, let's talk about the gameplay. It's a pretty simple game. You have your A button, which grapples. You have direction button, so if you grapple and then do up, you do a different grapple move. There's no chain moves, unfortunately, so that kind of sucks, but you have your strong strikes and your normal strikes. Like if you hold, then you get a strong strike, and if you want to do a combo, you just press the B button repeatedly over and over again. The D-pad is for your taunts. Each wrestler has about 4 of them, like one for each direction. So to counter moves in this game, you have to use either the left stick for grapples or the right stick for controllers, like the back, controllers. So in the game, to get finishers, you have to just beat up your opponent until the bar maxes out. There's also this spirit meter of short, which is basically like your health pool. So you start out with green, which is kind of like the middle. The more moves you do and the more successful damage you do, it goes up to red. And then the more damage you take, it goes down to blue. If you're in blue, it's basically danger zone. So in the Rumble, if you're throwing on the top rope and your whole meter is at blue, that's basically you're about to get eliminated. It's also easier to pin someone and hit someone that doesn't grapple when their meter is lower. So if you have a red, it's really hard to pin someone. And it also makes it easier to escape the cage. So the higher your meter is, in the red range, the more damage and more things you'll be able to do. The lower it is, the more damage you take, and the easier it is to pin you. And again, finishers you can use a finisher by pressing the A and B button on your GameCube controller. I think that's it for all the controls and stuff. Let's talk about gameplay itself. The gameplay itself is very bare bones. It's very basic, and you can kind of tell because this is basically a game made from scratch. So they're basically starting out with a template, because they also wanted to make the game different from the Smackdown games, make it a little bit more arcadey than the Smackdown games were at the time. I also wanted to bring up something about the gameplay. So in this game, what makes it different and unique from not only the Smackdown series at the time, but also previous AKI games and Warzone and stuff, is that any move can be broken up at any time. So if you're doing the last ride or something, somebody can just punch you and then interrupt it, which is kind of why multi-man matches can be kind of annoying, because if you're trying to hit your finisher, the AI will just punch you and it automatically just breaks. So it is really hard on multi-man matches because the AI will just either punch you or kick you or whatever, and then you can't do your finisher. So, and I think that's one of the main things that stands out of these GameCube games, is the fact that any move can be broken up at any time. They kept this in every other GameCube game. Probably because they wanted to make it different from the Smackdown games. Like, if in the Smackdown games, if you get a move in, the AI can't do crap. But in this one, they can. And they can interrupt it and be really annoying. So I also wanted to mention that, because that's probably the main reason why I hated this game as a kid or didn't like it, is because of that breaking up crap. It made me so mad as a kid to do like the Stone Cold Stunner and then get interrupted by the stupid AI like Hip Hop Hippo Albert. I also want to talk about the entrances as well, because they're kind of weird. You see, like, I guess to avoid having to do the entire motion, they do this, like, crossfade. So, like, if someone gets to, like, the ramp, it will, like, crossfade into a new animation. I guess to just save time and not animate that. It's kind of jarring, because when, like, a wrestler is doing their pose or they're about to get in the ring, rather than just getting in the ring, there's this crossfade effect that changes it. It's kind of weird. It's kind of... I don't really like it. I'd rather just have him move, kind of like in WrestleMania 19. But that's just an opinion about the entrances. Let's talk about the roster. The roster is pretty typical, you know, of the wrestlers you'd see in the time period of 2002. You have Steve Austin, The Rock, Kurt Angle, Triple H, you know. You got mid-carders like RVD, Booker T. Then you have your low card like Lance Storm, you know, the women like Stephanie and, you know, Trish and Lita. One of probably the most interesting things is the NWO. In this game, you get the whole trio. Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Hulk Hogan. All three. Because before this game came out, Scott Hall was still signed to the company. Scott Hall was released in like May of 2002. So Scott Hall made the cut to this game. Unlike in Shut Your Mouth, where instead of Scott Hall, you have like X-Pac or Shawn Michaels as the NWO guys. I just think it's kind of interesting. This is like the only wrestling game that actually has the original trio in its form like this, so that's kind of cool. And also, I want to mention they also have Hip Hop Albert. The Hip Hop Hippo Albert is in the game. I don't know when he used this gimmick. I guess it was 2002, but I just wanted to mention it because I thought it was kind of funny to see Albert before he became Sweet Tea. So now that we talked about the gameplay itself and the controls and whatnot, let's talk about the actual game modes. There's two. We'll start off with Path of Champions. Path of Champions is pick one of the main current belts, the world title, the Intercontinental, the hardcore, women's, tag, etc. And you basically go through in a gauntlet of opponents. For my run, it was about 9 opponents, and then I got to fight Triple H, who was the world champion at the time. And that's pretty much it. The matches are random, as well as like the match stipulations. So one match you could be in a singles match, and then you could be in a triple threat cage match, and then maybe a fatal 4-way ladder match. I didn't get any tag matches, but that's probably because I didn't do the tag belts. So yeah, like Path of Champions is literally just a gauntlet with random matches. You get to the champion, and then that's it. After you beat the champion, that's it. The credits roll. Like, there's not much else to it. And now the other game mode, Battle for the Belts. Battle for the Belts is, it's basically the same thing as Path of Champion. You pick one of these belts, and there's a lot of them. Depending on the difficulty you're on, easy, normal, painful, hard. Yes, painful is the difficulty. And hard. There are belts that are available to you. So if you try to, you know, if you're on easy difficulty and you try to go and fight for the Brahma Bull title, which is on painful, you're not going to be able to do it. You have to switch the difficulty. Which is kind of weird, but you know what? Hey. I think this was more so of their way to have replayability, because there are a lot of championships. Some are actually from past companies. Some are even like alternates, like the Brahma Bull and Smoking Skull titles. But I think this mode was basically designed for like replayability, because they expected people to play this like 50 times, you know? And again, it's just a gauntlet. It was about 5 matches on my run, but it was just match after match after match. The matches were random and all that again. So again, it's just the same thing as Path of Champions, except you got more titles you can fight for. So there's not much else to say about that. Also, they do have a creator wrestler, although it's not really advanced. I mean, this is 2002, so the creator wrestler, you're not going to be able to create like Darby Allin with like pinpoint accuracy. However, I was able to make whatever the hell this monstrosity is. Like, look at this thing. This is like something I'd make when I was like 5 years old, but it's honestly the best way to use the creator wrestlers, just to make the most ugly looking things you can ever think of. So my overall thoughts on WrestleMania 18. This is a game I played as a kid, So, and I thought it wasn't really that good as a kid, so I thought my bias towards it as a kid would like come into play, but honestly replaying it, it's not like a bad game. It's not terrible. It's better. I've played worse, but it's not. It's pretty empty. And again, this was like a foundational game, like WWE. No, WWE. This was a foundational game for the GameCube games. It was the first one. They wanted to get their feet wet, with the gameplay and all that, and see what they can do. And you can totally see the progression of the games getting better as time went on with WrestleMania 19 and Day of Reckoning 1 and 2. Now, would I go back and play WrestleMania 18? Not really. It's just there's not enough to do in it, and also the gameplay is really just it's not good, especially compare it to Day of Reckoning 1 and 2 and WrestleMania 19. Like those games just blow WrestleMania 18 out of the water, and it is kind of the reason why this game is kind of forgotten. But I do want to bring it up because this was the first GameCube game, and I played it as a kid, so I thought it would be kind of fun. I think that's it. I will be doing the rest of the GameCube games on the channel, so that will be fun, especially the next one, which is WrestleMania 19. And yeah, that's a retrospective on WrestleMania 18. Goodbye. Have a nice day.